Hello, Gwen Fletcher here, and I'm happy you're watching. Today I'd like to show you one of the examples from the Big Bold Words by Sue Wilson that were recently on TV. These come through Creative Expressions, who I represent when I go on the TV. So today I'd like to show you the celebrate word. I'm also going to show you an alternative example just to show you where we're headed and to show you the difference. So first of all, I'd like to talk about the dies themselves. They come in really attractive cardboard packaging, and within the packaging you have a set of 3 dies. So you have an outline die, which will give you a backdrop or an aperture. And then you've also got the inner die, which gives you another outline, a second very fine outline, and also the infill of all the words and all the little bits and pieces in between. There's a third die, which is this little rectangle in this case, and this will enable you to use the stamps that also come with the set that give complementary words to make up your own phrases. So there are lots of choices with these dies, and this little rectangle is going to allow you to create a panel for that sentiment to sit on. So that's really useful to have, and each set has one. They do vary in size, so there are options to mix and match. Also within the packaging you have some examples from Sue herself, and that's really great for inspiration and to help you to get started. Here's an example of the happy word, which is another one in the collection, and I've done this one with different colours than we're going to show you today, so just to show you some variation so that you know you can do what you do with it is your choice. I'd like to start then by showing you how to create the background panel, and for this I'm going to use the herringbone die, also through Creative Expressions and designed by Sue Wilson. I love these big background dies, and especially this one because it's really easy to extend. And the way we're going to do that is to cut a piece of card slightly bigger than we need. I would suggest, if you don't like measuring, you can start with a piece just bigger than you need and you can trim it down afterwards. That's absolutely fine. We're going to cut the die in one side, and when I do this I just check that my margins are all equal. If you are going to trim it down afterwards, then that doesn't really matter, but in this instance that's what I was wanting to do. Once you've done that, you can extend this really as far as you like, but for this example we're going to need to rotate it so that the herringbone fits where we want it to, and we can snip that, slip it back in. You'll feel it, you can sort of wiggle it around and you'll feel it snap back into place. So in order to do that we need to then tape it down so that it can't move, and we'll be able to cut these remaining 3 panels. Once you've done that, you will have a panel that looks like this. Into that we're going to cut our word, and we need to pop that straight into the center of our panel. I'm checking I've got equal pattern either side and also top and bottom. Once I'm happy with that and I've got it as straight as I can do, I'm just going to tape it into place, and then I can pop that through the die cutting machine. I will need to do this just off camera. Now when you take this off you might think, my goodness, that looks dreadful, and yes, initially it will do, because you've got all these little strange cuts and raw pieces from the herringbone, but don't worry because we are going to replace those. So I've got a piece of acetate ready cut, and on the back of here I've already got some red line tape. The red line tape is just a super strong tape, and it's perfect for acetate because otherwise you're waiting for glue to dry, which can take quite a long time. So let's get the back off our tape. If you find with this tape you can't get the back off, well, with any tape really, all you need to be doing is making sure that you rub it down really well so that the adhesive is well and truly stuck to your card, and that way you can then take the backing off much more easily. Alright, so we'll pop our acetate on the back. What this is going to do is support that slightly raggedy looking panel, and also we're going to be creating a shaker box. So this is going to give us our window into our shaker box. So there we have our Celebrate word. I just need to check. It needs to be this way up. Yep, so I've got it the right way up. Now, what I'm going to do next is to cut this die out of a piece of the same colour cardstock. I'm going to use the inner letter die again. The next thing I'm going to do is cut that in total out of the piece of card. And once you've done that, what you will then be left with is the outline, the very thin outline. This all comes from this one die. So the thin outline, and you will also then have all the inner sections to the letters. So the inner sections and all these tiny bits that come from in between the letters and the centres of the letters, you need to keep those. I tend to, when I'm emptying the die, do it on a piece of paper, and that way I don't lose any of these little bits. Because some of these, for instance, if you can see these two little tiny pieces here particularly, that's come from the centre of the A and this corner of the E and the R here. And there might be instances when you need to put those back. So it is worth keeping them. And I just have a collection of little plastic bags that I keep them in. Then the next thing we want to do, we're going to go back to our panel that had the acetate on it. And I'm going to pop this outline back in from where we cut it originally. So as I say now, that looks a lot neater than it did. There might be spots here where you need to add a little bit of glue just to hold down all those little edges, but that looks a lot neater now than it did before. Now we're ready to make our shaker box. So I have got one that I've already been working on, and I've already applied the foam tape to the back of this panel. Oops, I've just got it stuck to something. So I've got a shaker box here, I've got my Celebrate, and what I've also done, where the letters, where I know they're going to hide this foam tape, I've put some foam tape in the middle. That's only there to stop the box from sagging because it's quite a big panel. So to stop it from sagging in the middle, once we've made it, I've just popped some support of foam tape. You don't even need to take the backs off that. I wouldn't actually, because the sequins and things that we're going to put in here might just stick to it. So I would just leave the backing on those. All right, so I've got my foam tape here ready to reveal. And then I'm going to add the contents of the shaker box. I've got some little gold sequin stars, and I've also got some micro beads, but you can use whatever you have to hand. So let's just pop a few of these in here. I would pop them into the middle, and then you don't run the risk of them sticking to the tape that you've exposed. You can put this in first and then take the backing off the tape, but I sometimes find that things have a tendency to jump. I'm also putting in these little beads. I love micro beads, and these will actually help to shake the stars around as well, because they're a little bit static, so they can cling to the acetate. The beads will sort of knock them about a bit, if you see what I mean. All right, so that's our contents, and we can now put the back onto our box. So I have a piece of card here cut to size. I'm going to place that over the foam tape, and let's get that very firmly pressed down. Okay. And there we've got the beginnings. We've got the shaker box. So the beads just keep everything sliding nicely. Okay, now I want to show you how to we're going to create a contrast within the letters. So to start off with, I've got some coconut white cardstock, and I've got some double-sided adhesive. This is a very thin sheet, much like your double-sided tape. It has protective backing on both sides. I'm taking one side off, and I'm going to stick this to my piece of card and press it firmly down. I've left the card slightly bigger. A, it helps to see what you're doing, and B, gives you something to hold on to if you are doing anything sticky or messy or whatever it might be. I've also got some super fine glitters here and several pieces of paper just to help to keep them all nice and separate. And I want to try and create not exactly an ombre because these colours are not on the same palette really, but I just want a patch of each going down this piece. So I'm taking off the second side of the protective paper. That's now revealed our sticky surface. And to this I can begin to add my glitter. So I'm going to start with the lilac at the top. So I just want to make sure I put my glitter on the top 1/3. And then shake that down sideways. Don't shake it this way because it'll coat the whole of the rest of your adhesive sheet, which wouldn't be great. I will pop that to one side to gather up later and move on to my second colour, which is the Antique Rose. I'm going to pop this across the centre third-ish of this panel. I'm going to just blend a little bit across the border. Okay, and then I'm going to tip that down off the side as well. All right, let's take that out of the way. And then we'll do our final colour. Got another piece of paper here ready. Again, let's shake that onto the bottom third. Blend a little bit across that border. And then we can tap that off. All right, so we've got a kind of ombre, but not a perfect ombre. Just a graduated piece of glitter paper, really. Very pretty. From this now, I want to cut the word again. So I want my Celebrate die, and I'm going to place that into the centre of this piece of glitter. Again, whiz that through the die cutting machine, and then we can proceed with the rest of our project. So it's in machine, and then we can proceed with the rest of our project. So here we are. We've got our die cut word, and this is going to leave an aperture which we are going to use for something else. So I love these dies because there isn't any waste. Everything you use can be used for another project. So we're going to come back to that. I'll show you shortly what we're going to do with that. In the meantime, what I need to do out of this die is get the frame out, and you will need to use something to push it out because it's got that adhesive to it, so it's got a little bit of tack, and the die doesn't readily let go because of that. It's not that it hasn't cut, but it's just got that little bit of tack that's holding it in place. So you need to work your way around the outside edges of that, releasing as you go. It takes a few minutes just to get all those little pieces out, but once you've done that, you'll be left with a lovely outline, and also you've got the inners of your letters. So now we're ready to start assembling our final portion of this card. So let's bring back in the panel we made with our shaker box. Now at this point you can decide whether you want to use the glittery outline that's come from the die, or stick with your original lilac outline, or you might decide you wish to have a contrast with coconut white, or a cream or a white or something else, and you can choose at this stage what you're going to do with your word. You can also decide if you want your word flat or raised. I've got one here that I've done with cream outline and popped all the words back in, and you see those tiny pieces that were required to make up the letters again. That can sit quite happily there. You can do it that way, or if you prefer, if you look at this one, it's actually raised up with foam. So what you need to do there is on the back, I've got tape here, but you would replace that with some strips of foam tape, but that can be a little bit fiddly, as you can imagine, and it, you know, you need lots of bits to make sure everything stays in place. So it might be easier to go with a flat just for this example, but it's entirely up to you. And as I say, you can go whatever colour outline you prefer, or you can stick with the original one. So let's have a look at how that's going to look. We can begin to pop in our letters. So to attach this to the acetate, I would just use a little bit of a wet glue, anything that you prefer. I do like to use the Cosmic Shimmer Dries Clear. It's a wonderful glue. And bear in mind that on acetate it's going to take a little bit longer for it to dry because it's not sort of absorbed into the cardstock. So we're going to pop all the letters back in. It's easy when you've done a panel like this out of glitter because you can match the colours through the letters. That helps a little bit with getting your E's in the right place. Right, so now I can explain to you a little bit more clearly about the bits that we need to pop back in. As you can see from this, there are still small areas of the letters missing. So there's the bottom of the C or the top of the E, depending how you look at it. And I've got that here. It's a very small piece. This is what I mean, you've got to be so careful. That will go back in there. And then look at this bit. It's not part of either letter. It's not part of the E and it's not part of the B. So we can leave that. That's part of the background. We've got now parts of the L here and the E missing. And we've got those pieces here. So there's a little piece to go in there. We've also got this, which is the bottom of the L, and it's quite easy to spot because it graduates from lilac to rose. That just helps us locate. Then we've got this piece here, which is bottom of the L and top of the R, and that's going to be in our rose colour mostly, I would think. So I've got this long strip here. There we go. That's going to hide that foam tape that was just lurking at the back there as well. Then we've got a little piece for part of the B and part of the E, and now we've got this little piece here, which is that one. Then similarly, we're missing the bottom of the R, which is that. This tiny little corner piece, I only know which one it is because of the colour of it. That really is titchy. You might benefit from a sticky pickup tool at this point. I've got the top of my A missing, and well, it's the top of the A, bottom of the E, however you look at it. I think it's really clever, these dies, the way they're designed. I just took me a little while to get my head around them, I won't lie, when I started working with them, but once you do, they're super. So we've also got these pieces left. Now don't discard those because they'll come in for our second example that we're going to make out of our leftovers, if you like. So there's the shaker box, all complete, and all that needs is mounting onto a base card, and you're there. Isn't that lovely? The last thing I want to show you for this particular example will be our added sentiment for the words and the phrase that we want to make up. So again, little piece of double-sided adhesive sticky, and this is going to go onto a piece of card. I'm then going to glitter that, and I'm going to glitter it in the pale bronze, which is this one. I can just dip that in there, rub the glitter on, burnish it down so we get a lovely smooth surface for that. Put that away. Now I want to use one of the stamps that comes in the set. We've got lots of options here. So we could have Celebrate Your Day, we could have Let's and then Celebrate and then You. So you could put up two different words. Celebrate your birthday, celebrate this moment. Let's go with celebrate your day. So let's take the stamp from the sheet and we're going to apply this. I'm just going to use a normal little stamping block. I've got glitter all over my fingers here. Let's pick that up so we know it's straight. And I'm using a VersaFine Clair, which is a lovely black, a good solid black. You can also heat emboss on here, so if you wanted to add some embossing powder, you could do that. But just be careful when you're heating it that you don't singe the glitter. Press that down and let it sit a few moments just to let the ink transfer. It takes a little while. Sometimes we're too eager to lift our stamps and see what we've managed to produce, but that's not always the best idea. There we are. So we've got now celebrate your day on the glitter, and we can cut that with that lovely little rectangular die that comes in the set. Remember this little one here? And once you've done that, allow the ink to dry though before you do it, otherwise it might smudge. Then once you've done that, you'll be left with this. So you can then attach that where you choose to pop it onto your card. I think it would look pretty nice. Just there. Celebrate your day. So that's one part of what we've made. Now if we go back to this was the outline, if you remember, that we left when we'd cut our die out of the middle of our glitter panel. We also had the glittery outline from that. So we've got a glitter outline that came from when we cut that. I've also got a lilac outline which I cut previously, and we've also got the aperture that all came from. So what I've done, I've taken one of the Noble Stitched rectangle dies and I've placed it around my word. So I've centered it so that I can cut that down into a panel. Once you do that, you will then be left with something a bit more finished. So it's got a lovely stitched edge. If you don't have those dies, that's fine. Just cut it down into a rectangle. With a slightly larger size, I've then cut a slightly bigger one, and this I want to attach. So just apply the glue to the outside, to things that are rigid. These little pieces that are coming from within the letter, they can distort, they can wiggle about. So when you come to try and put your letters back in, you'll find sometimes they don't quite fit. So I would suggest leaving those pieces till later to glue down. Let's get this onto our panel here. So you see what I mean? These little prongs and things can move. So when you can put your letters back on there, they just don't quite fit. It can be a bit frustrating. So now you have an option as to whether you want to put back in a cream outline. And even though it's the same colour, you still do see the contrast. We can pop in a coloured outline. So perhaps the lavender one that we cut earlier. That would look quite nice. And into that you can then pop different letters. You might have some glittered letters that you want to use. You might have the plain cardstock letters that you want to use. That's what I'm going to use. I've got them already set out here on a piece of paper. So even with a lilac outline, I can put the lilac letters back in. That looks nice. Or I could have used the glittered outline and then put the lilac letters back into that. That looks nice as well. So you have lots of options, and when you've cut 2 or 3 of these, you'll always be able to do 2 or 3 different panels, which is really fun to mix and match all the bits and pieces. So I think I'm going to go with the lilac letters in the lilac frame. Obviously you would stick all this down as you go. For now I'm just placing them in here so that you can see where I'm going. Now you see what I mean about that? It's moved a little bit, so it's not quite sitting where I want it to. So because I haven't stuck it, I can adjust that. So it's the same as we did on our shaker box panel, just a different colour. And I want to now complete the letters as I did before. So I've got all the little pieces here, and we need to fill in just the portions that belong to the letters. Then I've still got the glittery bits that came out of my other word, and I can pop those back in to the bits that aren't part of the letter, and that's going to complete our panel. It then makes it look like the background, it goes right through the word, which it does. I've got my centre from the E, and then I've got the leg from that, the back of the L there. This is the bottom of the L, top of the R, like so. This piece here isn't part of any of the letters, so we can do that in the glitter. And the middles of the B's and the R would also be filled with the glittered pieces rather than the plain pieces. So you can see where I'm going with that. All right, so you'd persevere till you filled all those little spaces with the bits you need, and you would be left with this. I've mounted this onto a card, and we have our finished example there. How lovely is that? And again, you could add the little sentiment to this one also, and you could put that here, your day, you could put it here, across there, wherever you like. You could do it in a different colour, put it in a contrasting colour. The choice is yours, and the choices are many. So I hope that's helped clear up how to use those dies and given you a few ideas of what you can do with them. Thank you so much for watching. I'll see you next time.